You want to find a good book, right? Well, do you take the recommendations from others or do you prefer to do it yourself? Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. My name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen, and this is Books Banter and Beyond. Today, very controversial subject, book recommendations. I say that half jokingly, but actually, a lot of times, if you go on forums and such, there's a lot of actually talk about it because a lot of people either live by them or don't even touch them.
Right.
Because for me, and again, we'll go more about what I think and what you think as well, but are book recommendations useless or helpful? Many can say it could be a blessing or a curse depending on the context of and the individual that is reading. On one hand, it could be helpful if you're not one to be looking yourself, if you don't like to make decisions. A recommendation can be super helpful because it's done for you, whether it's by your family or a computer. And sometimes those people may know you from past purchases. So let's say your family knows that you buy a lot of fantasy. They may start to give you more fantasy because that's the trend that they see. However, with so many choices, they may not be so useful or helpful because of that same reason.
Right.
When you're flooded with so many opportunities to recommend, you end up flooding all of those recommendations. And you made a point too, right before we get on about something with movies. I made a recommendation about food. It could go for anything. There's so many things that people recommend that you really have to pick and choose what you think is useful for you. One reason, and again, I started saying this before I went into this, was one reason why I pick and choose personally what I do because I know me well to what I am good with and what not. So whether it's a kind of food, whether it's a book, I don't dislike recommendations, but I feel that I'm going to put the research in to make sure said recommendation does make sense before saying yes or no.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you have to also make sure if you're going to get a recommendation, it's from somebody that you know likes the kind of books that you like.
That's a good point too. I mean, I guess there is that thing of saying if somebody's recommending a book that they've never read, that's a word recommendation. So
Yeah.
I guess in a way, if you're going to ask somebody about, let's say, fantasy, you probably want to hope that they have read enough to
Or
give.
that you agree, or that you actually like their style. They've given you a recommendation before, you've read it. Oh yeah, we have the same
That's
similar
true.
style. I have a friend who likes to recommend the books that she's reading, and she loves the books that she's reading. Me, not so much. I mean, I've tried to start a couple of them, and I just realized we don't have the same style. We don't like the same things. We might like the same category, but not the style of writing, not the way, all of that stuff.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of ingredients that go into that.
Right. And, there's also I kind of think of it as when I was in school and teachers would be like, oh, here's the unsolicited suggestion that you never asked for. But
Right.
because I'm your teacher, here's what I think.
That they get
There's
to do
that
that.
kind of thing too, which is respectable in terms of what they're trying to
Right.
do. But when you look back and realize their suggestions are based on, like what you said, what they know, they may not be very helpful. They may be interesting to hear, but in terms of if you're going to sit down and actually do it, are you going to enjoy doing it? Or are you doing it because somebody said, hey, I suggested it?
Well, in a school situation, that's probably part of curriculum. So, that's maybe a little bit different. But in terms of, what do I read next? And somebody says, oh,
Right, that is
you'll
true.
read
And
this.
well, the reason I thought that because I know I had a few teachers when I was teaching that you'd go to them and say, "Hey, what do I read next?"
Right.
And they would give you a list. But then when you kind of went back to look, you go, "Oh, this is kind of their school list. This isn't necessarily their enjoyable reading list." You know what I mean? So I get how it would be curriculum, but I
Right.
think at the same time, when they're in teacher mode, it's kind of hard to ask them what's a good book to read because they're going to probably be like,
Right.
"Well, we're
Right.
studying
Exactly.
this."
This is what we're studying.
So you know. Um, But I mean, overall, I think there's, and there's the two ways to go about it. There's the person recommendation, so that would be your friends, your family, your local librarian, so to speak, or you have the computer suggestion. So internet searches, Amazon. When you buy something, it says, "Hey, you bought this here, buy this too."
Right.
All of which are useful to the sense of it's going to start you somewhere. So, like you said about your friend, how they're giving you the things, those titles may not work personally, but you could theoretically go off of those titles,
Right.
maybe then rabbit hole down to something that is useful down the line.
Right, and I'm of the ilk, and again, I'm a different kind of reader than you are. You read almost, I mean, at
Right.
least my sense is you read almost everything. You just find stuff and you read. You like reading. The act of reading is really important to you. For me, I have to get hooked into something, otherwise I could sit there for hours and just read the same word over and over again if it doesn't strike me. I need to be in it. And so if I find an author that I like, I'm going to read everything that that author wrote. Everything.
And that makes it easier for
Right.
finding because you
Right.
have that entire
I like their
library of
style. I like the way they write. I like their way they
right.
the template of the book because it all tends to be the same. You get comfortable. We talked about that before. You get comfortable in what you're
And
doing.
I will say, because there's examples where I do agree, but there's examples, for instance, of King, who's written books like Hearts of Atlantis or Shawshank
Right,
Redemption
right,
that are very different than his normal genre.
right,
They're not bad books. I personally can't handle them. They're
right,
very boring to me. Why? Because I'm used to his
right.
specific genre.
James Patterson. He does
Oh,
an
there you go. Yeah,
entire slew. I mean, he's so prolific. I've never seen so many books written by one individual. But he also writes books with other people. He collaborates with other writers.
right.
And
And I
he's got
think
a
he also
whole
started a young adult one too with his son, I believe.
Yeah, maybe, but I know he just wrote a book with President Obama. I mean, he's got books out there that
Right.
he collaborates on that have nothing to do with his other entire book series that he's well known for. The
Ah,
spies and things
yes.
like that. That's fascinating to me because then, exactly opposite what I said. If it's the author, I'll read everything that author writes. Not in this case, because it's and like you just said, they do two separate kind of things all at the same time.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
the
when
same.
you're used to something and they write something else, it doesn't make it good or bad. But if you want what they're known for,
Right.
it's not going to be on your list of
Right, right,
read.
right.
Which actually goes to our first question here, which I think is a great one: is have you ever read a book based on a recommendation that you ended up just disliking, and what made it a poor fit? And I think that's a great question to start with, right? Because
Right.
this is the total opposite of what a recommendation is supposed to be. Usually it's supposed to be a good fit. So have you read something that everyone's like, oh, bestseller, number one, and you just took one look and you're like, nope. Like,
All the time.
yeah, well, no, and it's funny because I go on Libby and you read the things and like, it's a Good Morning America or it's a whatever. And I read a page and I go, what the, you know, I don't understand what made this such a popular thing. And again, I always want to just caveat with it's not that these books are good or bad in what is in my words. It's the just because a million people say this is the best thing ever doesn't necessarily make it
It's the
so
best thing ever for
for
you.
you.
Right,
Yeah, exactly.
right.
So for me, I mean, I'm trying to think. There's been a few, but there's been a few, and it's funny. There's been a few classics. I love classics that are like, oh, best thing ever. I think it was like Jane Eyre or something like that. I don't know if I'm thinking of the right one, but it wasn't a bad book. But when you've read so many other classics, and then I read that one, it totally threw me off, and I couldn't finish it because I was so out of place with that title. And I know it was a big author, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I don't know if it was Jane Eyre or not, but it was an author who's huge, but because it was so different than the rest of the classics I read, I didn't understand what was going on because I was like, wait,
Right.
why would you tell me to read this when so it's it's strange when you enjoy, but then you find that one individual that you're just like, whoa. I never thought I would even say that, but you know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean?
it's I don't I'm thinking I don't actually ever ask anybody what are you reading that's good. I don't think I've ever asked that question because it's such a personal decision. I might ask about television shows, like
Okay.
what did you enjoy? And I don't know why that's different actually, because it's again it's storytelling. But I will ask because I get overwhelmed by all the names on Netflix and all the different things that you can watch, and I have not a clue as to even what to look at. So I think I
Right.
look for guidance on that. And I would think it'd be the same thing with books, that you can get overwhelmed by the enormity of how many books there are out in the world. So maybe you need a little guidance. But once you're in there and you've discovered the authors you like and you've discovered the kind of things that you like, I'm not sure that I don't want somebody to tell me. I literally I've gotten to the point where I don't really want when somebody starts to have you read that? It's like I don't care. I don't really care what somebody else has read, unless it happens to be the author that I'm already loving. And oh, I haven't gotten to that one yet. I know. Are you the same way?
Well, I was going to actually piggyback and say I think to dislike or to not read actually helps me narrow down what I'm going to read next. So I think in a weird way, as much as, and I agree, I don't necessarily want a recommendation, but if I find a book that I end up not liking and I just don't want to do it, it actually will help my brain go, okay, so when I'm searching next,
Right.
let's take those keywords out and do these keywords instead. So I agree. I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to read something of that's being said, but I guess in a way it can help to break down the search, I guess. And
Right. And I think there's also why are we reading? Are we reading for enjoyment? Are we reading to learn something? Are we reading to kill time? Why are we reading? And I think that makes a difference then in the kind of book that we're going to look for, right?
right, right. And then that goes into the next one is like if somebody out there was going to take a recommendation, do we think it's better from someone you know personally or the computer algorithm that happens to know your shopping purchases? Is there a big difference, or at the end of the day is it really the same because what you're telling your friends are what you're buying anyway, so really it's one and the same in a
That's
sense.
interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of an
Yeah,
open-ended question, I
yeah,
think.
that is kind of it is open ended. I don't know if a recommendation is more reliable from a friend or not. I think because of the science of artificial intelligence these days and the science of the algorithms. I mean, did you even know what an algorithm was 10 years ago? I mean, even the word we think about this, but it is a thing.
I
And
think
it's
I used to think I think it was a math concept that I learned
yeah, no,
about
this
back
is
in
yeah,
high school.
algebra, right? No, this is actually it's a thing, and it's related to something called retargeting. So when you go searching online for whatever, to something to buy, or you're searching to find out more about flowers or something, the artificial intelligence knows because it tracks your ISP. We're getting way too technical, but it knows where you went on your computer. Guys, if you think that your searching is private, it's not. So when you're out there searching around, unless you're on a incognito page, but even that's not so much. But if you're out there searching for such, you are training the algorithm. You are training the retargeting so that they know. How weird is it when you look for something and you see shoes that you like, and all of a sudden the shoes start showing up in your social media feed, right?
Don't even get me started on that. Actually, that happened yesterday. I was watching something a week ago, and I found that same person on Instagram all of a sudden, and I'd never seen them on my Instagram before. After watching them on TV, like it was two separate systems. It was TV, not even phone.
But think about, so just here's a quick education on that. So you watch TV, that's your it comes in through the internet or your cable, right? And so it's the same home that it's coming into, the same ISP that your computer, that when you're searching on your phone or your computer. So it's when you realize that it just is annoying. It becomes it's like that's why there's search engines now. People say don't use Chrome, don't use Safari, don't use any of those. Go use something like a DuckDuckGo, because those things won't track where you've searched. And if you start looking and on for everything, this is just interesting. You won't see that again in your feed. You will not see what you were looking for. So there is that. I don't know, but
See,
I
this is
tend to
the
trust.
beyond of books, banter, and beyond,
Yeah,
right?
no, but I tend to trust the algorithms probably more than my friends, because the algorithms is tracking everything that I'm looking at. And if I'm looking at it, I must be interested in it. And then I can
Okay,
make
all
that
right.
decision.
That
My
actually
friends
makes
don't live with me. My friends don't know, thank goodness. They don't know what I'm looking at. They don't know everything. I mean, they don't know. Is that Big Brother looking over our shoulder? Probably. But it
That could
makes
be a whole other book right
a
there of,
whole nother
you
book right
know.
there. But it also makes it easier to get good choices. I don't know.
See, this is the beyond of the books banter and
This
beyond. We
is
get
the
to go off
beyond.
on.
We did books, we bantered, and now we're way, way beyond. Um, we always like to make sure you know about the bookstore. Go check it out, nextchapterbookstore.shop. All sorts of really great things in there. Gently used. You've got comic books and romance books and science fiction books and fantasy books. You name it, it's in there. Look for it. And again, it's gently used. That means somebody else's story is literally connected to it. I love this. I say this all the time, and I will continue to say it. That's why used books strike a chord with me. That's why I'm thrilled that you did what you did by opening a used bookstore. I really like that. Any last thoughts, Rob?
You know, that was we just went off on a whole thing there, but no, I think I love the videos that we do because we definitely get to not only share our experiences with the public, but hopefully you guys will come on back and share your experience back and let us know what you think because every topic has multiple answers and opinions to it.
Right.
So let us know what you think.
Well, Rob, did you know that this is show number 60 that we've done?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. So I'm saying that because all of you who listen and watch these shows, go check out some of the other shows. These Rob comes up with some very fun topics. Sometimes I have no idea why you came up with the topic, but they're interesting and they're kind of all over the place, which is great because it really it's intriguing and it gets your brain going. It's like, oh,
We got a little bit of everything for everybody.
yes, we do. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Let us know what you think. We'll see you next time on Books Banter and Beyond. See you later, everyone.